If you're an anime or manga fan, chances are you're familiar with Shonen Jump. Shonen Jump is a weekly manga magazine that contains the newest chapters of various ongoing manga series. Shonen Jump is home to some of the most iconic manga, such as One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball, Bleach, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, just to name a few. 2014 would mark its 45th year anniversary, and to celebrate, J-Star's Victory Versus was released in Japan, being released here in the West as J-Star's Victory Versus Plus a year later. Personally, I grew up as a big fan of the Naruto series, and being more of a passive fan of Dragon Ball Z. But to be honest, when this game was first announced, those were the only Shonen Jump series I had really gone out of my way to watch or read. I was more than familiar with One Piece, D. Gray Man, and the like, but I hadn't had too much exposure to many of the other series represented here. Still, I saw Naruto and I was like, sure, I'll buy that. It's been a few years now since I purchased this game, and I remember liking it. Does it still hold up as a proper celebration of Shonen Jump? Let's turn the page and find out. J-Star's Victory Versus is a crossover arena fighter, where you and your opponent select 3 characters from across various Shonen Jump series, with 2 characters acting as the main fighters, and a third being a support character who can drop in and assist at various points. As a game meant to celebrate the 45th anniversary of Shonen Jump, J-Star's is a pretty excellent roster, boasting a total of 52 different characters across 32 different Shonen Jump series. The characters included are a great selection, and even includes characters you wouldn't really expect to be playable in a fighting game. Now it should be noted that of these 52 characters, only 39 of them are actually playable, with the rest being delegated to support-only characters. 39 playable characters is nothing to sneeze at, but for those who maybe wanted to play as, say, Alan Walker or Rukia, seeing them as support-only may be a little disappointing. God, Nero, I wish you were playable, I love you so much. I do, however, understand that creating full movesets for all these support characters would be a lot of additional work, and I'd rather them be present in the support role than not present at all. You have the characters you would expect like Luffy, Naruto, Goku, and Gon, but there are a few fun and unexpected choices, like Bobobo, Medaka, Lala, and Hinata. The game has a good balance between obvious and unique choices, and I think it makes for a pretty strong roster. I was a bit disappointed with the game's art style. The character models make everyone look a bit like clay figures, and it's not all that visually striking. This is a shame too, because the opening of the game looks great. It has Japanese text appear when characters attack, and uses cross-hatching line art for a lot of the shading. The intro feels like a manga come to life, and it really makes the characters pop. Unfortunately, this just isn't translated into the game itself. What we get doesn't look particularly bad per se, it just lacks a certain visual flair that makes it stand out from its other anime game contemporaries. There's a lot of unique things this game could have done to make itself more visually interesting, so I was a bit let down with what we got. Getting to the actual gameplay, this game is a 3v3 arena fighter, with 2 fighters and 1 support per team. The fight takes place on various open stages across many different Shonen Jump worlds. To win, you need to KO either opponent on the opposite side 3 times. Get 3 KOs and you win. Each character has light and heavy attacks which can be strung together to make combos. You can also block, dash, and perform sidesteps. I'll admit when I first started playing, the movement felt pretty stiff, especially when the characters would dash. Once you start dashing, your character is pretty much locked in the direction they're headed, with turning being a huge struggle. I did get used to it after a while, but it's not the fluid motion one would hope for in an arena fighter. Now each character has a super meter, which can be charged up or used to perform a special move. Each character has 3 special moves, each being based on various techniques the characters can perform in their original series, such as Naruto's Rasengan, Goku's Kamehameha, and Yusuke's Spirit Gun. Each character is exactly the kind of moves you would hope they would have, and these super moves do a lot in making each character feel distinct from one another. Also, you may notice a meter near the top of the screen. This is the burst gauge, which swings from your side to your opponent's side depending on how well each side is performing in battle. Landing a lot of hits on your opponent and not getting hit yourself will move the meter to your side. Once it reaches all the way, you'll be able to activate Burst, which will allow you and your ally to use their burst attacks, an attack which can do an absolutely devastating amount of damage and can really turn the tide of battle. Finally, each side has a support that they can summon at any time. Supports can range from attacks, healing, sealing an opponent's support for a certain amount of time, turning invisible, and more, so picking the right support can help you in a variety of ways. Overall, I found this combat to be very fun. Yeah, the movement can be a bit stiff, but all the attacks feel good to use, and they have just the right amount of impact that someone would want while playing as a really powerful anime character. The sense of power is also helped by the fact that the game's stages feature breakable environments. The stage damage isn't incredibly realistic, as a character even tapping them is enough to send whole buildings crashing down. But still, it can be satisfying watching a character go flying through a building or a statue after landing a really powerful hit. Now, when I mentioned that characters' super moves make them feel distinct from one another, I really mean it. Each playable character has pretty different playstyles. For example, Frieza is much more built for range fighting, having really weak combos but strong super moves that can be used at a great distance. Characters like Jonathan Joestar, meanwhile, lack long-range attacks, but make up for it with a variety of powerful up-close attacks and can string together very long sets of combos. Even the way characters charge up their meter feels different from one another. For example, when the Dragon Ball Z characters charge, the meter will slowly but consistently charge up as you would expect. The Naruto characters, meanwhile, have a unique charge system. Instead, when their charge is activated, it needs to be held for a few seconds. Once it does, the character's meter will instantly double. This means they can get full meter right at the start of a round, just a few seconds in. However, if the meter is low, they'll have a much harder time, as they'll only be able to charge up 2 squares of meter into 4. The characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures can't charge up the meter anywhere near as much as other characters, only allowing 1 level of full meter instead of 2. However, they gain back meter quickly and automatically, so the player doesn't need to worry too much about charging their meter. That's definitely one of this game's greatest strengths. It feels like the team went through a lot of effort to make each character play exactly how you would expect. It really feels like they cared about the characters and went through a lot of effort to ensure that each character felt as close to the source material as they could. When Goku and Vegeta charge up their meter to full, they go Super Saiyan. Hiei pulls off his bandage to reveal his Jagan Eye, with his charge having his darkness flame surround him. The camera flips Nero upside down during his victory burst. There's so many small details like that. I'm always a sucker when these little details are put in. It really makes it feel like those who are making the game really care, and are willing to put in time and effort to give the fan of whichever character they're playing as something to smile about. Heck, during the characters' intros, each character's name card will be designed and stylized based off of their series. The game even has trivia for its loading screens. After playing for a while, the team that really clicked for me was Madara, who I would play as, Hidaka as my partner, and Nero as support. Madara was just fun to play, so it made sense that he would be who my team revolves around. Hidaka was my partner because she has an area of effect move that stuns all enemies in the area, which was great for setting up combos. Nero worked best as my support as his invisibility usually meant I would get a free combo off, which with Madara is usually quite a bit of damage. Of course, with so many unique characters to play, there are a lot of different team combinations to be made, so the game does have that incentive to play around with different trios, which was quite enjoyable. I will say though, on the subject of teams themselves, a gripe I have about the gameplay is that the game doesn't really have a feeling of teamwork, despite being a 3v3 fighter. Usually what will happen is when a match starts, you'll go after one opponent on the enemy team, and your partner will go after the other, leaving you on opposite sides of the match away from your teammate most of the game. There is a team attack you can use in this game, where after launching an opponent in the air, you or your opponent can hit triangle to follow up, and if the button is hit again, you'll perform a team attack which does a lot of damage. But you're so far away from your partner most of the time that getting to unleash this attack is really uncommon. I think the cause of this problem is a lot of the stages are a little too big, and with how far you can knock enemies back, it's easy for you and your partner to end up on 2 entirely different sides of the stage, and it can be a struggle to get back to your teammate if they're in trouble. Maybe if the stages were shrunk a bit so all the characters were much closer together, it could help this issue, but I also feel like this could make the screen a mess of beams and punches to the point of chaos, so I don't know. Teamwork also becomes an issue since either you or your partner can activate your support character, which leads to your teammate using the support when you could be in much dire need of it. It's too bad too, because those instances where you do manage to work together can feel very satisfying. I remember one match I noticed my partner Nube used his special move which stunned the opponent and held them in place, which I was immediately able to follow up with one of Vegeta's Big Bang attacks. It felt great! I just wish moments like that happened more often. J-Stars has a variety of different modes that the player can go through, each with varying levels of entertainment value. The game has a story mode of such, called J-Adventure. This mode lets you pick one of 4 different arcs, featuring Luffy, Naruto, Ichigo, or Toriko. Not Goku, surprisingly, though he is on Toriko's team. It's just weird seeing Goku being sidelined like this. Anyways, in this mode, once you pick your team, you adventure around on a ship, fighting opponents, completing side missions, and upgrading your ship to reach new areas, with the ultimate goal of assembling a team to win the J tournament. The story is presented with really boring and static portraits of the characters and text boxes, and I didn't really think the interactions between the various characters were anything all that special, which is a shame because it's usually my favorite part about these crossover games. The other problem is for each arc you're stuck with a pretty limited selection of characters, which isn't really what the player wants during a big crossover game. I'll be honest, this mode didn't really keep my attention for long, as it felt a lot more as busy work than fun. I really wish this mode was better, because I'm usually a massive sucker when it comes to a story mode in crossover games, but even this couldn't win me over here. The game also has Victory Road, where you can go to various stages and fight themed battles with predetermined challenges thrown your way. The mode isn't spectacular, but I did complete it. You can pick any character you've unlocked and change them at any time, and the challenges add a little bit of spice to the combat. It took me a couple hours to play through the mode, and it gave me something to work towards, so I think it did its job. Just not something all that memorable or worth replaying after finishing it once. Finally, in terms of single player modes, the game also features arcade mode, where you can fight 6 consecutive battles to get a high score, with each arcade mode being themed after characters who specialize in certain techniques, what year the series were released in, things like that. I actually found this mode pretty difficult, for a reason that segues into another issue I have with this game. Since this game is 2v2, you have no way of switching the partner off during gameplay. As such, your success depends not just on your own skill, but the skill of your partner, which can be a problem. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of times where I get absolutely destroyed and it's completely my own fault for the loss. But there are other times where I'm playing as well as I could be, but my partner is elsewhere getting absolutely steamrolled, and so I lose the match through no fault of my own. In most modes, this isn't a huge deal. Battles don't take that long, and you can just restart and try again. However, in arcade mode, you need to complete all 6 battles without losing to have a chance of beating the high score. And the likelihood of your partner not being worthless in at least one of those fights is just unlikely, making arcade mode actually pretty frustrating to play through. If you could turn off the 2v2, this would make arcade mode a lot more fun, but unfortunately that isn't the case, leading me to avoid this mode like the plague. Now I should note that for these modes you can play them with a friend, which does mitigate the reliability of AI. But in return, you need to play with this just awful split screen. You get so little visibility with the actual stage in this mode, it's insane. I have no idea what they were thinking here. So playing with a friend or a computer comes with its own set of issues. There's really no ideal selection of how to play. So yeah, not a whole lot of praise for the various modes of this game. But I would like to note that I still have fun while playing this game. I just feel like this game is much more fun when either playing with a friend, preferably online and not using the split screen, or just messing around against the CPU in versus matches. I actually come back and play this game every month or so, but when I do, it's usually just to play a couple matches in versus for like an hour before putting it back on the shelf. The game I feel works a lot better in short little romps instead of long play sessions. Most of the other game modes either just drag or don't offer too much more than the standard versus mode, but the gameplay is fun. One final thing to talk about is the game has some bonus features that gives you a summary of each represented series and some bios for the characters. The descriptions aren't too detailed, but I still like them. Plus it makes sense to have something like this in the game. With big crossover games like this, it's an opportunity to introduce players to a bunch of new series they may not have heard of before. In fact, it was playing this game and reading through these bios that introduced me to Madoka Box, Yu Yu Hakusho, Assassination Classroom, and the series that would go on to be one of my favorite mangas, Majin Tante no Gami Nero. Like I said, nothing too terribly detailed here, but they do their job and can still be fun to read through and learn about the various Shonen Jump series. So what do I think about J-Stars overall? Well, it's a mixed bag. The core gameplay, while not the deepest thing in the world, is still fun to play, and there's a lot to enjoy about trying out different teams of characters. I was also very impressed in the amount of detail that went into the individual characters, demonstrating clear care for the source material. However, the game is a pretty weak offering of game modes, being adequate at best or frustrating at worst. There's a lot to like about J-Stars, and if you're a fan of these series, you're bound to find something here for you. It just doesn't have enough to keep you fully invested for too long. As such, I'll be ranking J-Stars Victory Versus at the number 4 spot. The game doesn't have enough going for it for me to place it ahead of Way of the Samurai 3, but I did have fun while playing it, which is more than I can say for Avengers Battle for Earth. J-Stars is a fine game, just not enough to be the ultimate celebration fans may have wanted. Alright, so what's next for the Tome of Silver? Next time, we'll be checking out a small franchise you may have heard of called Pokemon. but it seems Chance doesn't want us looking at a mainline game quite yet. Instead, we'll be taking our first dive into the world of Pokemon spin-offs. Which one? Well, I like to keep a little bit of a surprise. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this video. Take care, and maybe we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.